is meeting number 23 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs. We recognize that we meet on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Pursuant to the order of the House, the committee is continuing its study on Bill C-10, an act respecting the Commissioner for Modern Treaties implementation. I would like to welcome our witnesses on the first panel. So we have from Kitsala First Nation, Glenn Bennett, Chief Counselor by Video Council. We also have the Comox First Nation, Chief Nicole Rempel by video conference. And then we have the Naskapi Nation of Kawachikarama with, thank you very much, very good. Chief, we have Chief Louise here, Natawapio, and Christina Caron, a lawyer. Welcome to all of our panelists, and to the folks on the video conference screen. You know, if you're looking at trying to get our attention, there's a raise hand function on your screen there. Just push that, and the clerk and I will see that. Everyone will have 5 minutes for their opening comments. I'll give you like a 30 seconds left, just so you guys, wherever you are in your remarks, will know to wrap it up. And just folks in the room as well, remember that, and the folks online, when you're not speaking, turn your microphone off. Usually the audiovisual people will also do that as well. And when you're not speaking, for the folks in the room, just either keep it in your ear or put it on the little spot that has the spot. It's very helpful for the interpreters, and make sure your mics are off when you're done, or the mic's beside you. So without further ado, we'll start with Chief Counselor Glenn Bennett by video conference. Please.
Good morning, everyone. Chair, committee members, civil servants, and honorable members of Parliament. My name is Glenn Bennett. I'm currently the elected Chief Counselor for my community of Kitsalas. Kitsalas were known as the people of the canyon. Our history is an oral history, so what I say, what I share, I hope you will remember it and share the knowledge that we've shared. I feel it's important that I need to acknowledge my team that helped me get here this morning. I have with me our Chief Administrative Officer, Ms. Linda Morvan, and she hails from the Nisga'a Nation, and alongside her is a young man, Cheryl Nabes. He's our Director of Lands and Resource, and also an elected council member. We have people that have worked very closely with my community of Kitsalas, Mark Stevenson, and the late Mel Bevan was our chief negotiator, who negotiated well over 30 years to look at a fair treaty for his people. And before he passed away, he initialed off on the final offer that was presented by both Canada and BC, in that he was recommending to his people that we accept what has been offered to my community. Back in April 10th of 2025, my community, we ratified our treaty. 96% of our people came out and voted. 85% voted yes. So in my mind, that's a clear mandate for our people to look at implementing this treaty that will take 2 to 3 years. We feel, as Canadians, can relate to the hard work to establish a strong foundation, and I feel that is the work we are doing here. Like I said, we negotiated our treaty well over 30 years, ratified in April the 10th, 2025. We recognize and welcome the positive intent of Bill C-10, establishing an independent commissioner to review federal treaty implementation is a step towards greater transparency and stronger relationships between Canada and Canadian treaty nations. We support the bill's foundation, the commissioner's independence, the ability to audit, public reporting to Parliament, and access to information. These are important building blocks for accountability. However, oversight alone risks documenting issues without resolving them. Our focus is ensuring this leads to real collaborative actions. First, we recommend a joint response mechanism. When findings emerge, we suggest a clear co-development action plan within a set time frame. This ensures we move together from insight to implementation. Second, we encourage clear commitment around information sharing. Let's ensure defined processes at all levels to avoid delays. Third, we believe direct reporting to Parliament benefits all of us by enhancing transparency and trust. Fourth, we ask that all Canadian treaty partners be included, reflecting our shared commitment to comprehensive inclusion. Finally, meaningful participation requires capacity. We encourage Canada to ensure resources are in place so Canadian treaty nations can fully engage and ensure treaty agreements are implemented as required. In closing, we believe Bill C-10 can be a robust tool for partnerships. By ensuring action, inclusion, and accountability, we can strengthen treaty implementation together, upholding the honor of the Crown. Thank you, and I look forward to continuing the collaborative work.
Thank you, Chief Councillor. And next we have Chief Nicole Rempel for 5 minutes, please, online.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for the opportunity to appear before you today in support of Bill C-10, an act respecting the Commissioner for Modern Treaty Implementation. My traditional name is Malidi. My given name is Nicole Rempel, and I'm the elected Chief Councillor of Comox First Nation on the east coast of Vancouver Island in British Columbia. Comox ratified our treaty on March 8th, 2025 with a strong majority vote in favor. Our members made a clear and informed decision to move forward under the modern treaty framework. We saw a record-breaking 91% voter turnout with 81% approval of our treaty and 83% approval of our constitution. For Comox, modern treaty is not simply a constitutionally protected legal agreement. It is the foundation of our governance model, our stewardship responsibilities, and our long-term economic future. It represents decades of work by our elders, leadership, and community members to establish a stable and predictable relationship with Canada. These agreements create complex, whole-of-government obligations that must be carried out consistently over time. Bill C-10 strengthens that foundation. A central strength of this legislation is the creation of an independent commissioner for modern treaty implementation. Independence is not incidental, it is a core design feature in this bill. The Commissioner is independent from both the federal government and Indigenous modern treaty partners, enabling incredible objective oversight that builds trust amongst all parties. This role fills a clear governance gap. The Commissioner complements rather than replaces the important work of the Auditor General by focusing directly on implementation progress, systemic barriers, and coordination across federal governments, or across federal departments. This distinction matters. Modern treaty implementation is not a one-time exercise. It is an ongoing operational process. Implementation determines whether governance institutions function effectively and whether economic development can proceed with confidence. From a Comox perspective, predictability is essential. An independent commissioner provides a practical mechanism to provide continuous oversight, improve transparency, identify systemic barriers, and address issues early. This proactive approach helps prevent small implementation challenges from becoming entrenched structural problems. Importantly, this oversight function also helps reduce reliance on dispute resolution processes or litigation. When implementation concerns can be identified, examined, and addressed transparently at an early stage, relationships are strengthened and resources can be directed toward progress rather than conflict. Bill C-10 ensures that treaty implementation does not erode over time through administrative drift, shifting priorities, or inconsistent interpretation across federal institutions. Through reviews, performance assessments, and public reporting to Parliament, the Commissioner creates sustained accountability that extends beyond election cycles and changes in government. For Comox, this is directly tied to intergenerational responsibility. Our leadership today is stewarding agreements that must serve our children and grandchildren. Institutionalized oversight helps ensure that commitments endure and that implementation remains faithful to both the letter and spirit of our treaty. Bill C-10 affirms that modern treaties are living operational frameworks that require sustained attention and accountability. It strengthens the nation-to-nation relationship by embedding transparency directly into implementation. For Comox, this means stronger governance, stability, clearer intergovernmental coordination, and greater confidence in long-term planning. We support Bill C-10 because it advances predictability, partnership, and responsible treaty implementation, all of which are essential to building a strong and self-determined future for our nation. In closing, Bill C-10 is about ensuring that the promises reflected in modern treaties are realized in practice. For Comox, implementation is where reconciliation becomes tangible, in governance, in stewardship, and in opportunities for future generations. By establishing independent, transparent oversight dedicated to implementation, this legislation helps ensure that commitments are honored consistently and endured beyond political cycles. We see Bill C-10 as a practical and necessary step toward a more accountable and enduring treaty relationship, and respectfully encourage the committee to support this important work. On behalf of the Comox First Nation, thank you very much for this opportunity to participate today.
And thank you very much. And now we go into inside the room for 5 minutes, please. Chief, you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Is it on?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Wajia, Luis Natapio, Dishadgun, Niu Yujmashko, Kawajmas. Good morning. My name is Luis Natapio. I am Chief of the Naskapi Nation of Kawajmas. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today as you consider Bill C-10, an act respecting the Commissioner for Modern Treaty Implementation. I would like to start by confirming the Naskapi Nation's support for the proposed legislation. In 1975 and 1978, the James Bay and Northern Quebec Agreement and the Northeastern Quebec Agreement, NEQA, became the first modern treaties in Canada. The Naskapi Nation was among the first nations to enter this modern treaty framework. These agreements reshaped the relationship between the Naskapi Nation and the Crown. Their provisions are mandatory and binding on Canada and Quebec, and the rights they recognize are constitutionally protected. We have now lived under this framework for 50 years. While our experience with Canada concerning the implementation of the NEQA has generally been positive, it has not been without its challenges. On the positive side, our experience with Cernac's Treaty Management East Implementation Branch has been excellent for several decades, continuing up to the present day. On the challenging side, we have experienced lengthy delays with some federal departments in completing negotiations where there is a clear treaty obligation, and we have often found ourselves in the position of having to educate parts of the federal bureaucracy of the fact that we are and have been a self-governing modern treaty holder for many, many years. We have often felt that these challenges exist because we are a small, remote First Nation and our voice is not heard. That said, the NEQA has binding obligations that must be met regardless of size, location, policy, or program limitations. And so far as treaty implementation is concerned, I believe that a challenge common to all modern treaty holders across Canada is structural in nature. For example, implementation responsibilities are distributed across numerous federal departments and agencies, but there is no institution specifically mandated to provide consistent, specialized attention to modern treaty implementation. Despite the constitutional importance of these agreements and the vast lands, resources, and communities they encompass, we believe the proposed legislation will address this gap by providing the tools necessary to ensure that the federal system consistently delivers on what Canada has already agreed to in constitutionally protected treaties. More specifically, the Commissioner would provide sustained independent oversight focused on implementation, combined with transparent reporting to Parliament and mandatory departmental responses. Modern treaties today cover approximately 45% of Canada's land and sea mass, 80% of the North's land mass, and most of Canada's coastline. They are foundational to Canada's legal and economic landscape. Yet, there is no dedicated independent oversight mechanism focused specifically on federal implementation. For over 2 decades, the Land Claims Agreements Coalition has advocated for the creation of an independent office reporting directly to Parliament on Canada's effectiveness in implementing modern treaties. Bill C-10 meets the objective, and for this reason, we support the swift passage of the important proposed legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. Okay, so we're going to go to our first round, which is 6 minutes, and for the Conservatives, we have MP Morn, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to all of our chiefs and leaders giving testimony today. I'll start with Chief Louise in the room here. Welcome, Chief. You spoke about some of the stats in terms of modern treaties. Very impressive. I have the map here in front of me. Was it 40% they cover the landmass? And about 27 modern treaties, give or take, depending on how you define it, probably, according to some of the stats in Canada itself. I certainly agree with the notion that Canada needs to be 100% better in terms of implementing modern treaties. But I do see some challenges with this bill. I think some people would say it's not perfect, but let's not let perfect get in the way of progress. I would like to see maybe a little bit more teeth to it, quite frankly. How do you, looking at this map and it covers 40%, and you have communities in here from the West Coast to Inuit communities to your community on the Quebec-Labrador side. I've heard things that this budget might have maybe a $2 million operating cost to start. Right now, you're having trouble as a small First Nation getting into many government departments. Do you have faith that a $2 million startup government arm will do right by implementing modern treaties? Is that enough to actually do the work that it's supposed to do?
I believe at this time, whatever help we can get, we'll do. We need all the help we can get. So, do you want to add more?
Okay, that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Maybe I'll ask the same question of Chief Rempel as well.
Yeah, thank you for the question. While I don't believe $2 million is enough to address all of the issues with the federal government implementation, I think it's a start. I think across Canada with modern treaties, the strength of our leadership can advocate for more funding. But to say, well, it's not enough funding, so let's not do it, just that doesn't sit well with me as a leader. So I would welcome it being underway.
Thank you, Chief Rempel. And maybe to Chief Bennett, how do you project how this office is going to prioritize what it studies? Like, again, there's 40% landmass here covering Canada, very diverse group of Inuit, West Coast, Northern Quebec, Cree. and a lot more other tribes and diversity. Chief, how do you project Kitsilus to get on the priority of what needs to be studied and have that in balance with, say, Chief Rempel's community or out east or an Inuit community? How do you think that's going to be determined?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mormon. And, on behalf of my community of Kitsilus, this is a process that we started well over 30 years ago. And, I find we as Indigenous people are extremely patient, and we're willing to work with all levels of the federal government within our province here in BC. You look at the majority of First Nations, a third of them come from here in BC. And I feel that if we can look at establishing a positive relationship, in my mind, it's all about relationship building. And I think my community, if we've demonstrated that with the federal government and through the various programs that are currently delivered, but by now what is referred to as ISC, Indigenous Service Canada. We are very fortunate in where we live. We're remote. We live in northern BC. By plane, it's an hour and a half. And so in my mind, that's very remote. And I feel that what we can bring to the table is the experiences of our people. Our people lived a harsh life. You look at the climate we live in, winter. Our people wintered on the coast. And so, I think what we can share with the federal government will be positive to demonstrate that our willingness to look at sharing our story, sharing how we got to this process in what is now referred to as a modern day treaty. We're waiting now for the federal government to do its part and to look at how we go forward, Mr. Morin. I feel it's positive, and we're very pleased to be here today to provide our testimony and to listen to all the parties that are around the table and do the best job we can in answering the questions that you provide to us as Indigenous leaders for my community. Thank you.
10 seconds left.
10 seconds?
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Next, we'll go to Jaime.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for your testimony today. My prior job before being a member of Parliament was the treaty education lead for Nova Scotia, and during those presentations that I would give all across the province, I would say that treaties are the foundation for Canada, whether it's the pre-Confederation treaties, the numbered treaties, or now the modern day treaties. They all ensure that we as a country are able to flourish. We are able to be able to create partnerships and ensure that those partnerships continue. Now, with the modern day treaty commissioner, I think one of the things that this committee would benefit greatly is really getting a sense of if this modern day treaty commissioner was in place, how would your community utilize that to further your treaty's implementation? And I'd like to start off with Chief Rempel, because you talked a lot about predictability and partnership and sustainability. I'm wondering if you could elaborate how would you use this treaty commissioner if this legislation is successful and there was a treaty commissioner today? How would that treaty commissioner, in your eyes, be seen to advancing treaty implementation in your region? And I'll go to Chief Louise next on that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. For me, it's about holding the federal government accountable to the responsibilities of the treaty on their part. Just recently, Comox First Nation was doing a public forum with BC and Canada unilaterally made a decision in that presentation without conversation with the province or Comox First Nation to extend the effective date of our treaty by 1 year. If we had a treaty commissioner overseeing that process, we wouldn't have been blindsided in a public forum. You know, to be able to hold our partners, our treaty partners, accountable in a responsible way that is also independent of the federal government and the nation, I think is the responsible way to move forward. I think it provides a level of comfort, I think, on all parties within the treaty to have that independent body. I don't know if that answers your question, but
having to go to a bureaucrat or a member of parliament or a minister to complain about what had just happened, you would have an independent ally that you could rely on to start and facilitate those conversations with the federal and provincial governments. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Chief
The first part of your question cut out, but I got the gist of it, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's correct.
Chief Louise, to you, how would you utilize a modern-day treaty commissioner if you had it in place right now?
Is it on? Okay. Can you repeat your question?
Well, this legislation contemplates a further modern-day treaty commissioner. If that modern-day treaty commissioner was in place right now, how would he be able to help advance treaty implementation for your community?
Well, I wish we had one years ago, so we could understand the modern treaty. Like you said, you were teaching it. We were never taught. Even in school, we were not taught. Only maybe the council members knew about it. So I think it's time that we know about it, and the members know about it. Our community members know about it.
And I only have about 2 minutes, but I think one of the great things that I've seen from treaty commissioners in various provinces like Manitoba and Saskatchewan is that they have a specific mandate towards not just educating the community members, Indigenous communities, but educating members all across the province. Why is education so crucial for the treaty relationship moving forward for your community and for your nation?
Oh, education is very important, not only for us, for all Canada, so that they understand where we come from. And the history is very important, so they understand why we are the way we are.
Do you think that in your province or in your region, that enough Canadians understand the current obligations under the treaties, whether they're historical, whether they're modern-day treaty or the modern-day treaties? Do you think there's enough of an understanding of the partnerships and the obligations created by those treaties?
No, there's no understanding. If there was understanding, there would be less racism, less systemic racism, if there was an understanding. So the education is crucial.
Chief Bennett, just lastly on that point, do you think enough people in your region, province, understand the obligations of treaties, and do you think that a modern-day treaty commissioner would help that?
I think that, I often say that I need to do a better job, and that would be in demonstrating not only to my community, but to our neighboring First Nations and to the province and to our local municipalities, the city of Terrace, the regional district of Kitimat-Stikine, all supported our treaty process. And I think that's because we did a really great job in trying to not only educate our people, but educate those that live in and around us. And so with this position, I think they can look at supporting First Nations all across Canada that are either treaty First Nations or those First Nations that have made the decision to enter into treaty negotiations. So I feel that this position will bring great benefits not only to Indigenous people but to Canadians.
Thank you very much, Chief. And bienvenue, Deputy Lemire.
So welcome, Mr. Lemire. 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of course, I am thrilled to be back. So, Chief Natawapio, thank you for being here today. First, I would like to send the regards of Magdalene Gill, who is also your member of parliament. As you know, she committed to visit you as soon as possible at Kawawashikamak, which is close to Shefferville for those who are more familiar with white names. So my first question is more about your own history. In the 70s, in Quebec, there was the flourishing of hydroelectricity. It's not for no reason that the Cree and the Naskapi were among the first, if not the only ones in Quebec targeted by modern treaties. Do you feel that at first people really wanted to do this, and once the foundations were established, the government felt less of a need or a motivation to implement these modern treaties?
I didn't get the. Yeah, it cut off.
Le son a coupé.
Testing test.
Okay, let's do a quick little test.
Testing sound test. This is the English channel for the interpretation.
Less fort, strong.
Will be yeah. That's true.
It will be clear on your ear now.
No, I hear you.
Keep it off.
This is off.
English, perfect.
A little red light, make sure that's off. Okay. Which it is. Okay.
Donc, pouvez-vous nous parler?
So can you tell us about your history? And why is it that in the 70s, there was this urgency to sign modern treaties, and now 50 years later, you are still waiting?
Waiting for what?
For the sign for the result of the modern treaty to about the attendre après
Waiting after the economy, waiting after all the promises that people have made to you.
Okay, in regards with the agreements,
Oui.
we're still waiting. Can I have you answer that? I'm so confused.
Can I jump in? OK. Oui, pour les Naskapi, c'est un
For the Naskapi, they are in a special context. The implementation was completed and it's still ongoing, but one of the big tragedies of the Naskapi is the qualification of a modern treaty because they are becoming less and less modern. In 1978, when the Naskapi signed a treaty, it was under a completely different government policy compared to today. The Naskapi had to cede their lands and their rights in those lands in exchange with around 20 or so chapters in the convention. And one of the major issues for the Naskapi, and that can be addressed through a reporting and a continuous examination of the implementation, is the evolution of the treaty. During the Northeast Quebec Agreement, there wasn't a chapter about the evolution of the treaty. The vision at that time was more like the regulation of territorial claims. And sometimes back in 78, the government just felt it was a done deal and that the treaty did not need to evolve. So yes, the implementation was okay. Today, do we need to take another look at the implementation and look at the current context? Because as you mentioned, the context back then, there was a rush to do it. And the Naskapi signed a treaty during the time when the Bay James Convention had been signed 3 years earlier. And that removed all the rights of all the nations in those lands. So when the Naskapi negotiated their own treaties, it was all zero. As for the question of levers, First Nations who sign treaties, they do not have levers to reopen chapters of those treaties to make them evolve. And this report that looks like another report, it's not just another report for the Naskapi, it's the only little lever they have left to knock on the door and to ask for a modern implementation of the treaty, and that's aligned with current policies. Question. So, can this mandate be given to the Commissioner, which is to recommend elements related to the evolution of modern treaties? Absolutely. Do you have any other suggested amendments that may be a good idea to be integrated in this bill? No suggested amendments. I think that the Commissioner has fairly broad powers in the recommendation powers, and in those recommendations, maybe they can have these elements related to the evolution of the treaty. So maybe one final question for you, Chief Netawapio. Do you feel that having a commissioner as an ally during the course of your history would have helped?
Miigwech.
Thank you.
Now we will go to Vice Chair Schmel for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here on this very important study. Just to kind of reiterate what I've said before in previous appearances, we agree with the diagnosis. We have some issues with the prescription on how this bill is worded and how it's going forward. We agree that the government over hundreds of years has failed Indigenous people. We agree that the word of treaty, modern, numbered, traditional, otherwise, there's been many examples, too many examples, where the government has failed to live up to its word, despite signing on the dotted line and all the pomp and ceremony that goes with it, and then the government goes to fail Indigenous people. So, having said that, we want to try to help make this legislation as strong as possible, so there are consequences that if there's a change in government or a change in deputy ministers or a change in whoever, that the departments are held to a standard to continue to uphold the word. Okay? So maybe I'll start with Chief Rempel, because you did mention that. So on that note, if we're talking about holding government or treaty partners to account, other than a report or naming and shaming, which this bill basically does, what other mechanisms are there to ensure that there is some accountability on the government side?
Sorry, what other mechanisms within the bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are ample teeth for improving accountability, efficiency, and overall improvement in the implementation of modern treaties. The Commissioner will have access to and can require information with powers that resemble those of the Auditor General. Parliament will use those reports to hold departments accountable, and the Commissioner can follow up with audits to ensure recommendations are implemented at the same level as the Auditor General. Going beyond the powers contained in Bill C-10 would disrupt the carefully calibrated balance in the bill.
Okay, so in the terms of the Auditor General right now, agent of Parliament, the Auditor General has the ability to table reports, and at that point, Parliament tries to hold the government to account. Right? We do that in question period, we do that in committee, there's a whole bunch of different levers at our disposal. Having said that, there's only so much that can happen if the government, the executive, the cabinet, decides not to react to that report, like there have been many Auditor General's reports that have shown where failures are happening with Indigenous communities. And we've seen those reports also highlight that nothing like substantial to the amount of funding that has been increased, the subsequent improvement in housing and infrastructure, et cetera, has not equaled. Mm-hmm. So how do we then hold government to account?
Well, I think the answer is in the question by not assigning it to the Auditor General. I think different agents have different purposes. The CMTI was modeled on the Office of the Auditor General and would have similar roles, which is focused on internal government of Canada accountability. And so
That's what I'm trying to highlight is
if that's their focus, rather than the Auditor General having a platform of many things to observe, the sole purpose of this is to ensure modern treaties are being upheld.
right. So if the Auditor General is highlighting such inadequacies in terms of funding or results for clean drinking water, that kind of thing, right? It's failed over hundreds of years, okay? It's not a liberal versus conservative thing here.
For sure.
Okay? It's still failing to this day, all right? We've had an evacuation the other day in northern Ontario because of unsafe water. Okay, so how do we then... So we know this is going on, right? We know the government's looking after drinking water. We know the Auditor General has come out with a report saying they're failing. But I guess success for many of these nations would be zero boil water advisories, right? So where are we moving towards a piece in this legislation where we can say if the government does not live up to its word when they sign on the dotted line, what consequences happens?
You have about 10 seconds to answer. About 10 seconds to answer. And if you find you can't, you can always send it in writing too as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's where litigation and things come in and dispute resolutions, and that's not where modern treaty nations want to go. We'd rather,
Is it
that
right?
commissioner to assist.
Right, and courts would be the next step after that.
Thank you very much.
And I don't want to go there.
No, nobody does.
Thank you. Okay, now for the Liberals, we have MP Levac, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Donc,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question will be for Chief Natawapio. As you have said, maybe the word modern is a little bit obsolete, as this treaty has been around for 30 years. But you partook in the process that developed this bill. Can you talk to us about how you were involved in this process and why this active participation was important?
Can you repeat? It's hard.
C'est difficile pour moi d'écouter.
oui. So, la question que je pose est...
So my question, you partook in the creation of this bill. The working group that created the request for the commissioner. How important was your participation for you and for this bill?
I'll have Christina answer that. Yeah.
Oui, mais ça fait plusieurs années. Là, je ne sais pas si je vais répondre correctement.
It's been many years, so I'm not sure if I can answer it properly, but there were many, many meetings to have this common objective. Everyone agreed that in Canada, when there's something that we value, we agree that it takes a commissioner. So that means a lot of meetings, a lot of networking between communities that may have real modern treaties. The development of all this comes from the First Nations. This is a government bill, but the main stakeholders said that they needed this and said that what is in here is enough. When you need a glass of water, someone might ask you, would you prefer orange juice? But when you need water, you need water. And everyone rallied around that message. Now, can this bill be better? Maybe for some, this may be viewed as the government's, but this was the result of many productive meetings. So my next question will be for Chief Bennett and maybe also Chief Bennett. You talked about the importance of active participation. Choices, but because of that, maybe there is also the question of resources. Do you believe that additional resources are needed? So more capability for First Nations so they can do their work with the commissioners.
Je le vois plus. Maybe.
I don't see him anymore. Chief.
Chief Rempel, same question, please.
Sorry, and so the question was around resources?
Yes, if you believe there's a need for additional resources, tools for your communities or modern treaty communities to work with the commissioner.
Well, I think there's always resources needed, no matter what level of government we're looking at. Budgets are always over budget. Comox First Nation does what we can within our realm of capabilities, always looking for resources and putting in resources where we have to from own source revenue. I think the $2 million budget assigned to this potentially isn't enough, but it is a start. And Comox First Nation is always looking for constructive ways to collaborate and come to solutions in an open and transparent manner that addresses the needs of everyone.
20 seconds left.
Je pense que ça ira.
I think that will be it for me. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have MP Lemire for 2.5 minutes, please.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Natawapio or Ms. Caro, what do you believe are the legal costs that First Nations had to pay in order to defend their rights annually?
Écoutez, c'est dur.
It's hard to put it in numbers, way too high. And then there is also the time cost. For a small nation like the Naskapi Nation that needs to send their lawyers to investigate the implementation of this instead of working on urgent local issues. So a few employees of the nation, a few lawyers, and a few consultants. We shouldn't be spending so much time on this issue. So yes, there's a question of resources and time that can be used for other things. And the time to create a report is also time that is taken away from the nation. Except that, unfortunately, too frequently, what we see with the federal government, it's that they use legal threats to make the government act, to make them take First Nations seriously. And when they have requirements ordered by the courts, that's when they start acting. Do you think there's a way to change how things operate? And do you think that the commissioner may have an important impact and allow First Nations to focus their resources on most essential resources, including their children? Absolutely. For example, the Naskapi have an oral tradition. So we are not only asked to sue the government, we're also asked to document with words things that don't work. And you shouldn't look down the reports, because for a First Nation to write that report is culturally sensitive and takes into account the fact that there's enough reporting and it's time for the government to do it through a commissioner. So 100% have a report that writes about things that don't work. That triggers the honor of the crown, and that's enough in most cases to bring them to the negotiation table and move things forward.
Okay, now MP Schmel for 5 minutes, please.
Mr. Chair. And Chief Rempel, I don't mean to keep coming back to you. It's just the testimony that you had questions previous that sparked a lot of questions on my end. And just again, for everyone here, we're just trying to point out where we think the bill falls a little short and where the bill, in our opinion, could be stronger to ensure that everyone here and those across the country get the results they're hoping and wanting for. So please understand where we're coming from on this side as we ask these, what can seem difficult questions, but please understand our goal on this, what we want to see achieved. Now, during your last round of questioning, maybe 2 rounds ago, we heard the words like independent agent of Parliament a lot, right? Although Parliament gets to vote on this, and I do agree that reporting to Parliament is better than reporting to the government. The issue that we've seen, and again, happens all the time, is that the government makes the recommendation, for the most part, and then Parliament votes on that person. So if there is a majority Parliament, then the government will choose the person of their choosing, right? Which will then, or could, you hope that it doesn't, but you could potentially find an individual that might be a little more sympathetic to the government. Do you know where I'm going with this? I want to ensure that the person going in, how do we ensure that the person going in is approved by the nations themselves? Is there a mechanism where the rights holders have input on who they would like to see in that position?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the construct would be in that appointment. I would hope that it would be, because treaties are, at least the modern treaties in British Columbia, are a tripartite agreement. I would hope that it would be a tripartite process in appointing, but I'm not sure that works across provinces. So yeah, maybe it's the AFN and Parliament talking together about appointees. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the other. I could see it would be, and I don't know how you'd go about this. That's the other problem. See if the rights holders then had an individual that they would like to see, and then the government just basically approved it all. But you can't bind a legislature, so I get that. It's too bad there wasn't a process, unless everyone else has a process here that would be an idea. I don't know, is anyone in line? But then we mentioned that the reports come out, name and shame. If the government doesn't come to the negotiating table, then unfortunately court is the place where we go. Nobody seems to want that. Where we're looking at it, and again, if there are consequences within a department itself, whether politically with the minister or with the department in its leadership, that if they're not living up to the word, and the reports have come out, they continue to ignore it, or they continue to say, well, it's not that big of a deal, there has to be some consequences. That's how I think we're going to have real change in this. Like, look at how many education reports we've had come out. Or boil over. Well, we haven't met our targets this year, so we'll push them on to next year, and then maybe the next year if we don't meet. And you know what I'm saying? Like, there are no consequences other than a story in the media for a day or two to shaming them, and then it disappears. Something else happens, and we're still left with issues in the education system or issues with water quality. There doesn't seem to be any consequence. I don't know if anyone online, Chief Rempel, I know, been kind of picking on you a lot, but that's just because, like I said, you had previous testimony that got my brain working here. But if anyone else online or in person wants to comment or help us along, I'm willing to
20 seconds.
Open it.
Perhaps maybe you could put something into to writing and put forward then.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not a bulletproof solution, but I think it does improve accountability and efficiency, and that's a start. But I would certainly like to see things with more teeth.
Thank you
To
very
hold
much.
all parties accountable.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, now for the next 5 minutes and the last slot is MP Hanley.
Thank you, and I will, Mr. Chair, I'll share my time. Is my mic on? Yeah.
Yep.
I'll share my time with the member from Nunavut, Sidlout, and Chief Matawapio. I'd like to direct a question to you. I was interested in the aspect that you brought up about the importance of knowledge, of education, of what modern treaties mean for your nation, and how this bill and the establishment of a modern treaty commissioner could help with that. And I wonder if you could flesh that out a little bit. Like, how would you tangibly see that as helping your members to be well apprised of what are the risks and what are the benefits and what you need to know about being a modern treaty nation?
I think it would help my members understand what happened in the past, more understanding, and like I said, it's important to learn about the history, and then we could move forward with the knowledge and knowing that we have allies, we have partners. It's to better our community too. It's to better our community.
Thank you. Briefly, Ms. Caron, would you, given your legal expertise, I wonder if you could comment on the scope of an Auditor General, perhaps doing this work, periodically examining implementation and reporting and performance versus a dedicated modern treaty commissioner. Apart from the time and the focus aspect, is there a scope difference that you think is important to point out?
Unfortunately, I'm not an expert in, that mandate of the Auditor General. I would say that legally, it would have more direct impact on documenting treaty violations or treaty breaches. But the main difference is certainly the importance that the issue would have in the hand of a commissioner instead of being between the expenses of officers from the transport ministries and, all other kind of examinations. But legally, it can be useful to document breaches and relieve the community from that work of investigation. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Laurie, you will have 2 minutes, please, for question and answers.
Kuyanamik to my colleague for sharing his time with me. I'll be asking Chiefs Bennett and Rempel to respond to my question in that order. So I think that we need to think of an analogy between public safety and reconciliation. So when we think about public safety, there are different players like RCMP, bylaw, security in buildings, and CSIS. And CSIS has oversight for national security. And I wonder if you could share with us that reconciliation also has different players like laws, policies, funding, land claims agreements, modern treaties, numbered treaties. But I think that the commissioner has such an important role that they also do oversight. What they would do is make sure that reconciliation is being implemented. And I wonder if you could share your thoughts on that comparison considering reconciliation, public safety, and the analogy of what that oversight looks like for you? Chief Bennett?
Thank you for the question. And, I can reflect on my community and the agreements that we have in place when it comes to community policing, that we have a tripart agreement with the RCMP and the provincial government. I feel those are like a stepping stone in moving towards implementing our treaty, that policing for my community is so important because we're a small nation, total population maybe a little over 750, maybe 450 people live on our two main Indian reserves, and to have that agreement in place with the RCMP is so important. It gives us the ability to look at ensuring that we say we want our community to be a safe community so our families can raise their children, grandchildren in a safe community. And we can only do that with the tools that we currently have, because ultimately, under our treaty, the RCMP will have jurisdiction in enforcing the laws of Canada. And it only can be done if we come to the table and share our concerns and what we feel is important to the nation, because we live very close to the city of Paris and Thornhill, and ultimately those are the areas that our people live in and around, and to have a safe community.
Thank you so much, Chief Bennett. I do hope that Chief Rempel
excuse
can
me,
also respond.
just I have to intervene. We're just over time now, so I'm going to have Chief Rempel respond to Lori's question to the clerk so that we have it, because it's an important question and we don't have the proper amount of time to do it justice. So thank you very much, Chief McWitch. And that concludes our questioning for this round. We're going to suspend briefly. I'd like to thank all the witnesses for the very important testimony today. So we're going to suspend, and our next panel will begin momentarily. Thank you. Champagne-Isiac First Nation, Chief Barb Joe by video conference. Ian Robinson, advisor by video conference. From the Ho'ate First Nation, we have Chief Councillor John Jack, welcome, and Brent Lehman, General Counsel. So we will proceed with the folks online first, so go ahead with your presentation. Chief.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Chief Barb Joe of the Champagne-Isiac First Nation. My First Nation is located in the southwest corner of the Yukon Territory. Our final and self-government land claim agreements have been effective since 1995. We haven't been able to fully implement our land claims agreement. The spirit and intent of the agreements haven't been met. There are many treaty commitments that have yet to be realized. Focus needs to be put on the achievement of the treaty objectives, not just the obligations. We want to see a whole of government approach. Treaty commitments need to be fulfilled with proper resourcing. Our staff focus on the work of my First Nation government, and in particular, working with our citizens, not spending time and resources struggling with treaty implementation issues. We are a modern treaty holder and a member of the Land Claims Agreements Coalition. We fully support the passage of Bill C-10, the Commissioner for Modern Treaty Implementation. Members of the Land Claims Agreement Coalition co-drafted the bill with the federal government. We are happy with the bill, and it needs to be passed without amendments as quickly as possible. It has taken us over 23 years to get here. At this moment, the fate of Bill C-10 hangs in the balance. We need you to listen to us and respect our words. We are so close to achieving one of our most important priorities. We require a Commissioner of Modern Treaty Implementation who will independently assess if Canada is meeting the obligations contained in our land claims agreements and report any findings directly to Parliament. The Commissioner will be an important oversight mechanism to help us implement our modern treaties. The Commissioner will be able to give their undivided attention to Canada's implementation of our treaties. We do not believe this critical oversight can be carried out effectively from within the federal government itself. The implementation of our modern treaties will benefit not just my First Nation, but all of Canada. We see this as a shared goal for all of us. By working together to create the Commissioner for Modern Treaty Implementation, we will improve treaty implementation in the coming years and decades for the benefit of future generations. We will move to get toward a better, stronger, and wealthier Canada, and I'm sure that is something we can all support. Kunis cheese, Shonithan, thank you. Masi cho, merci.
Thank you very much. And now, Chief Jack, you will have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, merci, Chair and committee members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on Bill C-10. Uklama Sayachat, Hishtukshut Lahoet. My name is John Jack. I am the elected Chief Councillor of the Hoyt First Nations. We're located on the west coast of Vancouver Island in British Columbia. We're a proud signatory of the Monmouth Final Agreement, one of 5 nations that have signed, and we're very closely celebrating 15 years of self-government going back to April Fool's Day 2011. I want to acknowledge that this bill is the culmination of over 20 years of work, and that we appreciate the time and attention afforded to it by this committee here and now. We support Bill C-10 as presented and without substantive amendment. It is a deliberate and nonpartisan product of co-development between the federal government and modern treaty partners. This is across multiple government mandates with multiple parties to address challenges within federal structures. Constitutionally protected modern treaties establish a comprehensive and enduring framework for reconciliation. They are complex, whole-of-government agreements that create thousands of tasks and obligations that touch many departments and agencies. And while we have advanced reconciliation generally together, federal implementation efforts have too often been uneven, inconsistent, and poorly coordinated. It is not for the lack of goodwill, however, but rather the levels of awareness, understanding, and sustained follow-through can vary widely across the many institutions, across the many months and years it takes to do the work. When issues arise, it's not always clear how to resolve them, save through the courts. But we believe that that should be the last resort, not the first option. All that takes time and money, and it takes it away, and it erodes confidence. The opportunity costs of such are just too high. Treaty implementation isn't just the responsibility of one department, it is for the whole of government. With many obligations and decisions spread across that vast whole, problems can persist without clarity, context, and understanding. A dedicated and specialized commissioner would provide continuous and impartial oversight that can help resolve or avoid problems before they become inflamed, regardless of who is in power. Such a role is too specific and too intensive for a general approach. We respect the Office of the Auditor General, but its mandate is too broad to achieve the focused and sustained attention needed to oversee and evaluate modern treaty implementation across the whole of government. Success here requires credible and reliable reporting that can assess not just the spending, but the consequences of policy decisions, administrative work, and the maintenance and upkeep of the relationships involved. Importantly, the bill does contemplate and require coordination with the OAG to avoid overlap, as we would welcome the engagement of the Auditor General when they have the time to do so. Bill C-10 provides accountability tools appropriate for the work of modern treaty implementation. Rather than make decisions or carry them out, the core role of this Officer of Parliament would provide impartial and independent information and evaluation through program reviews, performance audits, and other reports. Federal bodies must respond in writing to preliminary findings of the Commissioner, and those responses must be included in the final report. This means that Parliament, treaty partners, and Canadians everywhere can see the findings, the recommendations, and the government's response all in one place. From our perspective, the work of a commissioner for modern treaty implementation would contribute significantly to the ability of every party to our treaties to spend time on the real work of making our people's lives better now and until the future. If we can spend less time concerned about the efficacy of our government-to-government relationships, then we can spend more time working together to address the very real social and economic challenges that our peoples face. Together, we can deliver the results that modern treaties were meant to enable and ennoble. And in closing, we ask that Bill C-10 be passed swiftly and without major amendment. On behalf of my nation and my fellow Monol Treaty nations, thank you for this opportunity, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. And we're going to proceed to our first round of questions. We had a couple other people scheduled. We had technical difficulties on their end. The internet connections were not going, but they'll be rescheduled to a future date as well. So we're going to begin with the Conservatives for 6 minutes. MP Morn, please, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to our leaders for giving us testimony today. Chief Barb Joe, I'll respectfully start with you for a question. Certainly, I do hear you, and did you mention how many years has it taken to get here? 20?
Over 20 years.
And a large group of nations from Inuit, East Coast, West Coast, North, South have to come together to do this, this good work. And as my colleague Jamie Schmale-Cernak, Shadow Minister, mentioned, of course, we agree with the principle of what's trying to be done here. You mentioned that the government needs to implement modern treaties. Well, simplistically, I come from the numbers treaties, and my position is like, why don't you just do it? Why do we need a commissioner to kick you in the butt to do it? But I guess this is the structure of democracy sometimes in Canada. My question to you is, Manitoba and Saskatchewan actually have commissioners' offices. Looking at the modern treaty map in Yukon, more than half the territory is covered in modern treaties. Have you given some thought to just Yukon having its own treaty for the specific unique circumstances that those people in that territory face, as opposed to maybe having it jumbled up with, for lack of a better word, what's happening in Quebec or what's happening on the West Coast or what's happening in the prairies at Whitecap, Dakota, because those are vastly different communities. Would not a better solution be that Yukon have its own treaty commissioner?
Thank you, Chair. I'll answer the question. Champagne-Atac's been self-governing for over 31 years now, and our treaty is with both Canada and Yukon. And so we see the obligations from both governments as playing a key role in reconciliation. We have to honor that, or we have to respect that it's the honor of the Crown. There's responsibilities on both sides to implement our final and self-government agreements. And those agreements include many things, many responsibilities. I'll just give an example. In the Yukon, we have responsibilities under our Chapter 22, which include our Representative Public Service Plan. Those obligations have never been met. And those obligations deal with, it's an economic development chapter. But in that chapter, it talks to specifically the Representative Public Service Plan. We have been working with Yukon government somewhat to reach potentially its percentage of population in the Yukon that's Indigenous. That's 23%. The numbers are very low. Canada has not met that. Canada's numbers are very minimal. We don't even have a policy on representative public service. There's responsibilities across all of governments to implement these treaties, and it's our responsibility to make sure that the federal government and Yukon are involved, but it has to come from the national level and the federal government, because my understanding, the Commissioner for Modern Treaty will be an independent agent of Parliament, and that it does report to Parliament to work on due to these reports and the audits and whatnot and the analysis, and it's up to the Parliament and the elected officials to ensure that these things are done. There are many things, including our land use planning chapter. So we're stuck at this point in time because we've only got 2 land use plans in the Yukon. We have 9 more self-governing nations to do land use plans for. So the problem here is that...
Chief, just a second. I got 2 minutes left, and I
Okay,
really appreciate your answer, but I want to just quickly get, before my time's up, a question to Chief Jack as well. A very good answer. Thank you very much. You helped explain it for me. Chief Jack, a common theme of this legislation is that it will mitigate against litigation. You're in BC. How will this office have the power to help overcome things like Cowichan?
So I think one thing that the commissioner will be able to do is provide information and context in a way that presents a situation in a way that begs action from the federal government, and specifically the executive branch of the federal government. And in a lot of ways, the courts are a last resort for many of us, because the approach here is we need to get in a room and have a conversation, and we need the leverage to do so. Often, court cases result in the requirement for us to get in a room and negotiate. Well, let's just skip that part and actually go to the negotiation. And I think the other part about Cowichan is that the Cowichan tribes are not necessarily governed by modern treaties. And so modern treaties do establish a high degree of certainty and understanding about what it is we possess as modern treaty nations in terms of our sovereignty, our lands and resources. And therefore, it's not really up for debate in the same way as Cowichan may be. A good example of this is actually when I conduct meetings in our neighboring village of Bamfield. Sometimes I do joke that we are in the ceded territory, traditional territory of the Hoyt First Nations, because when we selected our exclusive treaty lands, that's what we're doing.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we have MP Hanley, please, 6 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for everyone that is here. And before I get to my questions, I I discussed with some of the members around the table, just would like consent to add an additional witness to this study. I hope that's okay with anyone. There's an important name from the Yukon that I would that can speak very well to this bill that I would like to add.
Yep. Okay. Thumbs up.
Thank you, and the clerk will receive the information. Chief Joe, it's good to see you. You were recently in Ottawa with the Land Claims Agreement Coalition. Several meetings there. I know this was one of the topics that you discussed. I wonder, as a modern treaty nation, of which, as you know, Yukon is very well represented. Can you elaborate on how important this position of a modern treaty commissioner would be to introduce accountability into implementation? And specifically, you might want to address the collaborative fiscal policy process. I know that there's been long-standing, slow but important progress towards 3 chapters in particular that are very important for the self-governing First Nations: languages, infrastructure, lands, and resources. And maybe how you see that relationship between accountability for implementation and the establishment of modern treaty commissioner.
That's a really good question. Chair, I will answer this question by stating that the First Nations have been involved with the federal government in creating a collaborative fiscal policy. It's called the Green Book. And that Green Book is a book that allows the federal government to work with First Nations to create or to develop an expenditure base for their departments on how we work. So most recently, we have lands and resources, infrastructure, and language. And those 3 envelopes have allowed us to figure out what we need internally to run our departments and to run them effectively. And so what happens is through the effective implementation, there's like back and forth negotiations. And so when things are taken off the table that are important for us, for example, under lands and resources or under our languages, we start having to fill in the gaps by looking at exterior funding. So we have to look to funding from other agencies, under other foundations, other things to meet that goal. For example, like languages, we've had a language immersion program that has some federal funding, but we've had to implement the rest of the program with exterior funding sources. And that's not from the federal government or Yukon government, but from other sources. We've also had to look internally to fill the gap. So that's the problem with lack of implementation or lack of direction in how we work in implementation. It's key that if we get the Commissioner for Modern Treaty, they will help break down some silos within the departments. There'll be more kind of not fast tracking, but there'll be better tracking and reporting so that things are able to be more consistent and across, and we're able to work together to figure out what's necessary. The First Nations know that there's too many departments involved in things, like when the Language and Heritage Department were involved. There were CERNAC, there were several different departments. And so, so I don't know if I did that justice. I'm just keeping in mind that there is timing. But it's a longer question.
Yeah, I think you captured it very well. Obviously, it is a lengthy question. But in the remaining time that we have, we in the Yukon we just had a special summit on Arctic security and the link to industry and investment. I think if we look at the role of you and other Yukon modern treaty nations and the capacity to participate in ownership, frankly, of whether it's an energy infrastructure, of the important resource development. How do you see the link between a fully implemented modern treaty and the ability to be partners in the direction that Canada is going in right now?
30 seconds, Chief Joe. Thank you.
Okay, so currently what is happening is in the Yukon, we don't have fully implemented land use plans. So under Chapter 11 of our final agreement, we have land use planning. So those plans have, for 9 of us in the Yukon, including mostly in the southern part of Yukon, those haven't been implemented. And by creating these land use plans, we'll have certainty around what happens within the area. And the issue that we see is that there's lack of funding, there's many things, there's like uncertainty about the whole land use planning commission. As nations, we're looking at developing and being involved with energy and the energy equity topic about ownership of energy in the Yukon. But how can we start developing these power lines, these lines across territories with no land use plans? So that's just one part of it.
Thank you very much. And Deputy Lemire for 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Mr. Lemire, 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Jack, first, thank you for your preliminary remarks. It taught us a lot. You talked about how this bill was drafted in a non-partisan manner, written in partnership, and it's the result of 20 years of work to respond to structural problems. And often First Nations that had modern treaties were often set aside. And thank you for bringing us more clarity on this process. We met at my office a few weeks ago. Of course, back then, I was spokesperson for Indigenous relations, and I was able to have a speech at second reading. This is important for me and for my assistant back in the time. And I was happy to be able to pay tribute to Jim Hadridge at that speech, because when that bill was called C-77, I was able to meet a coalition that Jim was part of. And he was a little bit like the spiritual leader of the group. He was a very important person that contributed a lot for the Land Claim Coalition and for many other Indigenous issues and societal issues for many individuals and for many First Nations. I wanted to pay tribute to him in the House, and you said that you wanted to meet me. We had a cordial exchange. And can you tell us more about how Jim marked your life and why it's important to highlight this today?
Jim was the main experience that I had when I first came to the Land Claims Agreement Coalition, back when I had less gray hair. And Jim is someone who is a titan of treaties and such agreements across Canada. He has touched the North, he has touched British Columbia. His wife even translated the Monmouth Treaty into French. Jim is important to me and to our nations because he was very central in this specific initiative. And unfortunately, Jim passed away a couple of years ago. And thank you to those of you who attended his memorial service a couple of years ago. But he was central in making sure that all of us in leadership understood just how much work had happened since 2003. When we talk about over 20 years ago, that's how long it goes to. And he passed away. He is someone who was not able to see Bill C-10, or as he knew it, Bill C-77, come this far. And his memory should be honored as a result of that. And I thank you very much for speaking his name in Parliament, because his contributions were so major that they bear mentioning. And so, yeah, thank you very much for that.
C'est pour moi une tristesse.
For me, it was very sad because I had not been able to better know him. I also had excellent conversations with his partner, Guylaine. I was asking myself, would this bill have been possible without Jim's historical contributions?
I don't know the answer to that, but it is very likely no, given how important his contributions were so early on, back when we were meeting about various aspects of this bill. I think his contributions were major and is something that is continually seen in the wording of the bill and the spirit of the bill.
J'aimerais faire une proposition.
I would like to recommend the following to the committee. When we'll come to amendments, I've always been surprised that this committee has the power to change the title of this bill, and I think it's a good idea to call this bill the Jim Aldrich Bill because he is more than a symbol. He is someone who particularly marked the Land Claims Coalition that pushed for the creation of this bill for the past 20 years during the creation of this bill. Do you think that's a good idea to pay tribute to such an important figure?
I think that anything that can honor Jim's memory without, I don't know how that works. And I'm trying not to cry. But I think that would be significant. That would be very, very powerful. I don't know how complicated that is, and I wouldn't want to have a monkey wrench thrown into what it is you're doing here today. But I do think that would be something worth considering.
Thank you very much.
Merci, César.
Thank you. And I didn't know him, but listening to that exchange, I wish I did. So thank you very much for that. Okay, now we have MP Morin for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll go back to Chief Barb Joe for my next question. 20 years is a long time, and again, no bill is ever perfect, but we can't let sometimes perfect get in the way of progress, but we always have to try and make things better and never be satisfied in a good way and find the balance in all of that. Out of curiosity, can you name, maybe in your personal opinion, the best commissioner's office or accountability office in any government structure that you know? So there's obviously the Auditor General for comparison, but can you name a similar type role that you saw as completely effective that this commissioner's office should be modeled after?
That's a really good question. I'm thinking out loud, and I think that there are probably a few. I know in the federal government, there's a commissioner for languages. And I don't know what the structure is. I don't know what the responsibilities are. I know that it was set up to assist with a number of different things regarding languages. The office would be totally brand new, so completely different responsibilities. I don't know any others that would be similar.
Okay.
Chief Jack would like to answer too. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
If I were to name an individual who I think was extremely effective, and forgive me, I think Sheila Fraser was her name back, the Auditor General back in the 90s following the sovereignty referendum. Her effectiveness was such that led to the Gomery inquiry and led to a lot of changes in the early 2000s. I think there's some real power in regards to the types of work that people who are dedicated to these kind of independent offices can do, and can lead to real change and real accountability, as long as the tools are used appropriately. Sorry, I really like Sheila Fraser's report and her demeanor. So that was something that I felt was significant and worth mentioning.
It was the Auditor General?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. After
a little bit before my time, if everybody. No, I appreciate the answer, Chief Jack, and maybe building upon it. So here in Ottawa, the general kind of process for the Auditor General is they do audits, and they'll put out a report, and it'll be 7 a.m. and MPs have the opportunity to go, but obviously not every MP goes, and so there'll be an issue, and maybe if it's relevant to, say, ISC, which I do, or CERNAC, which Jamie does, or any other office is relevant to them, they'll go. But out of 343 MPs, the vast majority don't go. And we handle it as we do in Parliament. Let's say this does pass with the Commissioner, and it puts out a report. Who's going to show up to that? And how can we make this office more effective, that more people show up and more action can be taken? Because if it's just another Auditor General's type thing with a specific mandate, I have a fear that there'll be less people showing up to that, and just maybe the CERNAC minister, for lack of a better, and the CERNAC shadow minister. How can we make this more effective?
Yeah, I think accountability is a set of tools in the federal government that is kind of widely spread throughout things like the ministers, the senior staff, the Prime Minister's office, committees like this, and Parliament as a whole. But they're only effective if the tools are actually used. And unfortunately, we find ourselves in a situation where I think it will take all of those tools being used, especially those of the opposition at times, to make sure that not only the government responds to what's going on, but that the media pays attention as well. One thing that I've noticed about the media is that they are often so stretched that they often accept the messages that are given to them. And I think that that's a tool for political parties and anyone who is scrutinizing the inaction of government.
Sorry, I got it myself.
At least that's okay. You got about 20 seconds to wrap up.
Locally, though, like, the reporters are asking me what it is they want me to print, and so I think that's a tool that can be used, because it's a reciprocal relationship. Attention and importance often go together, and we have to work on both.
Thank you very much. MP Hanley for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. And once again, I'm going to leave 2 minutes for Ms. Idlout. So if you can now help me with that, Mr. Chair. Thanks. And I really appreciate your testimony, Chief Jack. Forgive me for going back to Chief Joe as a Yukon chief, and I want to ask a couple of more questions. Chief Joe, on the question of accountability, I think this is a really important question. I just want to give you a chance also to dig into that a bit. Your nation, other modern treaty nations from the Yukon have been extremely effective advocates here on the Hill, on many occasions, whether that's as part of LCAC or independent trips. But how do you see the office, the potential office, as adding to your ability to advocate, but also following through on the accountability piece? How will that add to the accountability for the federal government for treaty implementation, in your view?
I think the office will be set up so that First Nations modern treaty groups will be able to see the reports that come out. And I know that Parliament is made up of elected officials. And so each one of you is also responsible back to your constituents. And so there's a responsibility as an elected official to be accountable to Canada and to be transparent. And that's part of good governance. And so I think with that process, it's the Commissioner for Modern Treaty being independent, will not be just working for one government. It won't be working for CERNAC. It'll be separate, independent reporting. And the First Nations and the Modern Treaty First Nations will be able to see that and be able to have the trust and the faith in that process. Make sense?
Absolutely, it does make sense. And briefly, so I can leave the adequate time for Ms. Sidlout, if there had been this office in place 20 years ago, what difference do you think it would have made to you? Can you imagine where you might be now?
Well, just coming from the Yukon experience, 11 self-governing modern treaty nations in the Yukon, I think it's important that several chapters of our final agreement have never been implemented. And for various reasons, we're looking at, like even from our Yukon Dispute Resolution Board, Chapter 26, which offers a process for dispute resolution, but the mediation is the way to do it. And we're trying to increase and improve that process to maybe have more like arbitration or more ability to get the anything that comes to it having more teeth and say and ability, not just to make recommendations, but to make actual decisions that have to be followed through. So there are many, many chapters that were never implemented. I can go on and on. The RPS,
Thank you.
Representative Public Service Plan.
Thank you. And you can send that in writing to Chief Joe as well, to the clerk, and we'll get the extras. So we have a minute and a half for Lori to ask a question. Go ahead, Lori.
Thank you so much. And I'll ask my question to Barb Joe. A similar question I tried to ask in the previous round about how CSIS does national security oversight. And I wonder if Barb agrees that the commissioner's role as oversight is just as important in ensuring that modern treaties are being implemented and that it would be a tool that can be used that fills a gap.
Yes, the Commissioner for Modern Treaty will definitely fill the gap, as I mentioned before, that the federal government doesn't have this responsibility built into it. So you have departments, and right now it's resting on CERNAC. And so we've always gone to meetings where we don't know the role. Like there's so many different roles within the federal government of the departments. They operate in silos. CERNAC shouldn't have the responsibility for implementing these agreements because it's all of government. It's the whole federal government. It's honor of the crown. And so we have the oversight mechanism that is independent, separate from the whole process. And having that transparency and the ability to compel witnesses or to get information, to be able to provide the information back to Parliament, and Parliament to be able to, bring it back to and have the committees and whatnot set up to be able to review those reports is important, I think.
Thank you. And next we have MP Lemire for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Jack, I'd like to continue our conversation. Tell us about the importance that a commissioner like this one can have to facilitate your relationship with the federal government. Often, we say that we need to use legal way to make the government move, and without these legal procedures, then it's hard to have follow-ups. Is that your experience? And the fact that elected members can have access to critics from people like commissioners, what kind of impact does that have on our work and our daily lives?
Repeat the English translation, something that
just turn off your mic.
Okay.
Essentiellement,
Essentially, can you hear me well now? Can you hear me? The legal impact that this has for you, when you have to always go to the courts to be heard by the government. What kind of impact can the commissioner have? And how do you think this commissioner can improve the work of us, members of parliament?
So this kind of goes back to some of our traditional values in regards to when trying to resolve disputes and disagreements and misunderstandings. It's important to go directly to your prospective partners and go through and actually directly directly have those conversations. In many instances, that doesn't happen without some form of leverage to make it happen. And unfortunately, that is often the courts making a decision to do so. But if we were to have a modern treaty commissioner really look into these items and produce reports and recommendations to get into a room to have a focused conversation in a certain way, then that provides even more tools that are less costly to everyone involved than having a judge preside over that.
On parle d'un montant de 10,6.
So we talked about around $10.6 million over 4 years.
Sorry, I'm trying to turn up the volume.
So the sum is $10.6 million over 4 years. That seems little compared to what all First Nations pay in legal fees and what the government pays to defend itself for the inaction. So do you believe that this saves a lot of money for the taxpayers and will allow you to focus on your real mission, which is the children in your communities, education, and so on and so forth?
I do believe that this is one of those instances where an ounce of prevention is worth just as much as a pound of cure. That we saved money and time and we preserve goodwill when we're able to go through these kind of processes, because the report of a modern treaty commissioner isn't necessarily seen as negative, whereas a court proceeding is often seen as adversarial by design because of the system we're in. And so I do think that there is quite a lot of value in going through a process like this, as long as everyone is paying attention and participates meaningfully.
Merci.
Merci.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our questions. But just before I ask for adjournment, I've been in contact with the Speaker of Greenland, and the Speaker has requested to meet with the committee. And just putting the committee on notice that we're looking at Wednesday, March 11th at 9:30 a.m. I know that caucuses meet, but it would be really great if we could meet with the Speaker of Greenland to talk about shared priorities in the Arctic. I think it's very important that we accommodate the request at 9:30 if possible. So just put you on notice, and we'll inform you as things develop and going through. So thank you very much, and thank you to all of our presenters today for, again, some great information as well. So I'm asking for permission to adjourn. Seeing nodding heads, thank you. Adjourn.
Merci à l'équipe de traduction, votre présence en personne.